You have to know what Palantir is because it is the gateway to implementing a communist-style, Chinese-style social credit score system into our society. We're being monitored, so anything you say, post, like, your text messages, your phone logs, your bank records, even your Oura ring, it all goes in a database, finds patterns, and creates a profile on you. Then it predicts what you will do before you even do it. Total abuse of privacy, but it's for your safety. You can watch Minority Report with Tom Cruise to get a glimpse. You're gonna say, the government can't do that. You're right, it absolutely violates our constitutional rights. So what they did is they used the CIA's venture capital firm called In-Q-Tel to fund Palantir so that the government can legally spy on its people through a private company. And by the way, Peter Thiel, who owns Palantir, funded J.D. Vance's campaign. Meanwhile, the Palantir stock is thriving, so we keep investing like idiots, not knowing that the more power we give them, the more we're being enslaved. If you don't want to be like China, it's time to wake up.
MIT did some crazy experiments where they were able to use Wi-Fi signals to see through walls and actually see the figure of people. Now, what's on the routers today is a lot simpler than that. It's really basic motion detection. And the way it works is it's sending RF signals out, especially the 5 to 6 gigahertz bands. It sends these out and it watches the reflections come back. And if the reflections change, because you're walking by the router, if the reflections come back louder, quicker, it sees something changed, it must have been motion. And so it can pick up motion in your home.
So what is that MIT experiment doing differently than these Wi-Fi routers?
The MIT stuff takes it to a whole nother level. They're using 16 antennas at the same time, sending off radio signals tightly coordinated among them so that when the reflections come back, they know exactly where it's from. And by coordinating all 16 antennas with a huge amount of math and processing to put the signals together, they can actually get pictures of what's moving. Not in perfect resolution. They can't see the person's legs, but they see the head, the body, the feet. It's pretty good. I mean, it really is images coming off the radio waves they're sending through a wall. So it's a little bit scary as you think about where this stuff could go. All of this technology of using the RF to detect motion is, of course, closing in exactly on the movie Alien.
Aliens. But why do routers need to do this?
I've seen a bunch of ISPs and router companies now actually offering as a software as a service that you can sign up for an extra cost and they'll give you motion detection in your house. I'm a little confused about the value of that. You know, they tend to warn you don't use this for home security. So what is a motion detection without home security? What's the point of that? And of course, there's some concern about all this data going back to them and what are they doing with it. Although I kind of think if they're watching your internet connection, your ISP, they probably already know whether you're home or not. I mean, obviously, I've got a problem that my dog will, wake up and start barking at the door, and I open the door and no one's there. So perhaps this will help me track down the ghosts that he's seeing. In conclusion, I want you to follow so you can get more technical discussions like this.
You bought just the Wi-Fi signal bouncing off your body. All right, so here's how this works. Your Wi-Fi router is constantly sending out radio waves at about 5 gigahertz. These waves, of course, bounce off of everything. I'm talking your walls, your furniture, and of course your body. And when you move through your home, those reflections change in ways that are really, really specific to what moved and how it moved. Your router already tracks something called channel state information, or CSI. It's basically how the router optimizes the signal between itself and all your devices. But CSI also encodes the shape and movement of everything between the router and your devices. And of course, that includes you. Xfinity figured this out. They shipped this feature called Wi-Fi Motion to every customer with one of the newer gateways. This is at no extra cost. You don't need any extra hardware. Your existing network essentially becomes a motion sensor. And of course, they market it as a smart home feature. I've got this working where when I walk into a room, I can automatically turn the lights on. Now, if I pull apart the marketing branding, the real term for this in the industry is called presence detection. That's the original term. Your router is capable of detecting your presence. Of course, the companies are going to brand this as Wi-Fi motion, Wi-Fi sensing, Linksys aware, whatever sounds less creepy, basically. But the underlying capability is the same. Your router knows that you're there. Now, if what I'm saying is already evoking that scene from The Dark Knight where the Batman uses sonar from cell phones to catch the Joker, you would be pretty close to the money, because motion detection is just step 1. Researchers have already published steps 2 and 3. Let's get into it. So in 2023, Carnegie Mellon University published a paper called Dense Pose from Wi-Fi. Using just Wi-Fi signal from a standard router, an AI model is able to reconstruct your full body pose. This is where we step beyond just someone in a room to actually understanding the position of your arms, your legs, your overall posture. Multiple people in the room at once, through the walls, with no camera, just radio waves. This is really wild tech. And then it gets even more sophisticated. So these Wi-Fi signals interact with your body in a very unique way, depending on your bone density, your body mass, your posture, etc. A 2025 paper called WhoFi showed that we could take advantage of these Wi-Fi signals to identify who the person actually is, essentially re-identification. So the way you walk, the way you shift your weight, even the way you sit, it creates this very unique biometric signature in the Wi-Fi signal. And they use a transformer neural network to match those signatures to specific individuals. Now, this is simultaneously creepy, but also super useful. In a sense, your AI systems can know who the person in the room is, so you can change the preferences accordingly. And you don't need to have like an invasive camera in every single room to do it. So if we take a step back, step one is Wi-Fi just detecting movement. This is already working in millions of homes. Step two is Wi-Fi reconstructing your precise body pose through the walls. This is published research. Step three is Wi-Fi being able to re-identify a specific person just based on their unique signature, also published. Suddenly we've gone from a very coarse-grained motion sensor to essentially a surveillance system that works in the dark, through walls, on hardware that you already own. And the gap between detect motion and identify the person is a simple software update. The hardware is already installed. A little bit of edge compute and you're already there. Now you can imagine this technology is very dual use. You can use it for surveillance, but you can also use it to power your own AI Jarvis. But what's really interesting is this exact same physics, like radio waves essentially as a sensing medium, is being commercialized at a massive scale. A company called Zynar emerged after 9 years in stealth with a $1 billion valuation and $100 million in funding. The investors include Steve Jurvetson from the SpaceX board, the co-founders of Yahoo and Siri, and Skype's founding engineer. Now I'll leave it to your own imagination to think about what a company was doing in stealth mode for 9 frickin' years, but the tech itself is worth digging into. What Zynar has built is essentially synchronizing existing Wi-Fi and 5G signals to sub-nanosecond precision. I'm talking about radio waves that travel at 30 centimeters per nanosecond. If you can measure the timing of that precisely, you essentially get sub-meter quality positioning that works indoors, outdoors, through the wall. No GPS required, no new sensors required. They're calling it the foundational layer for physical AI. And honestly, that makes a ton of sense. Like we've talked about this in the past. GPS does not work indoors. Cameras can drift. Nobody has cracked a universal positioning layer for the physical world. Zynar is saying that we already have one. It's called Wi-Fi and 5G. We just weren't listening to it correctly. They've got 100 patents filed, 90 of those have been issued, and there are 0 rejections. They've already got $500 million in contracts and many more MOUs. Now look, they haven't named their carrier partners yet, and of course MOUs aren't signed deals, but that investor list and patent portfolio tells you that this is not vaporware. All right, so Wi-Fi can see you through your walls, and a $1 billion startup just turned every wireless network into a positioning grid. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because the defense world figured this out too. You might know Palmer Luckey, co-founder of Oculus, sold it to Facebook, and then started this defense company called Anduril. We've covered their VR headset in the past. And as of this week, they just raised $4 billion at a $60 billion valuation, with A16Z and Thrive Capital leading. Kind of insane, but also goes to show you how much money and potential is left in the defense sector. One of their systems is the appropriately named Pulsar, essentially an AI-powered electromagnetic warfare platform that can passively sense and classify RF activity. It listens to every radio frequency emission in an area and identifies what's producing it and geolocates the source, and can even deliver an electronic attack. All autonomous, all running on the Edge AI, meaning you don't need to send this data up to some cloud to process. Anduril, of course, also deploys autonomous surveillance towers on the US-Mexico border through the CBP. These sensing arrays have like radar, thermal, camera, all fused together through their Lattice AI platform into a single real-time operational picture. The essence is really the same principle as your Wi-Fi router sensing your body, except you're using more modalities, and this is a $60 billion defense contractor sensing everything on the border and the battlefield. So we went from the home to the enterprise to the battlefield. But we have one more domain left to go, and that's space. And this is honestly where it starts to feel like science fiction. Let's take the same idea and move it into orbit. Hawkeye 360 has 30 satellites flying in clusters of 3 about 500 kilometers up, and they have a single job: detect and geolocate every frickin' RF emitter on Earth. I'm talking ship radios, radar systems, GPS jammers, emergency beacons. They use this technology to track dark ships, basically vessels that turn off their transponders to hide because they're doing illegal stuff. But of course, that doesn't matter because satellites still see the radio signal, meaning you can go dark on AIS, this open source data that I use to track the Iran strikes, but you can't go dark on physics. Pretty freaking wild. So of course, this company has contracts with the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office, Raytheon's an investor, another company called Spire Global has 100 satellites doing the same kind of RF intelligence work. That little mini map in your home is effectively global. There are satellites overhead right now whose entire job is to light up every single RF emitter on the planet. Every radio, every radar, every phone is a dot on the map.
Their sole purpose is to kill people. Everything in the public record is telling us that these cell towers are the perfect spy weapon. They can listen to all of the digital traffic in the area. They produce a radar effect that can see through walls and track people in their homes. They can track the movement of your smart devices. They can listen to you. They can watch you. They can intercept your communications, and they can beamform. And this is the big change with cell tower technologies. They can shoot a microwave laser beam, an invisible laser. Those actually exist. They're silent, they're invisible, and some of them don't leave burn marks when they go through the wall. They don't leave burn marks when they go through your clothing. What ends up happening is like the microwave oven effect when you're slow cooking something. It's little changes, little by little, that eventually culminate into cooked meat. But the microwaves that come out of these towers is the same as the microwaves in your microwave oven, for the most part. And essentially, it can slow cook you. That's why they have limits to how strong these towers can be. But they're not respecting those limits. Those limits are there just to pretend like they're safe and effective. But there are known harmful effects from the radiation that's coming from these towers, and that's why they put FCC limits. But these beams exceed those limits. Nobody's going to come measure the beam that's hitting you or your phone while you're doing 5G. But that's exactly what's happening to everybody. Everybody's getting beamed. Everybody's getting slow cooked. And because the cooking is so slow, the effects look kind of random. It's like a sizzle and a pop. And it's like, oh, there goes a joint. There goes a back. Oh, he's got cancer. And essentially the whole body just begins to break down little by little. It looks like aging, and nobody's the wiser. But here's what the government is doing now, according to all of the reports that are out there. They're putting people on a list if they don't like what you say on the internet. And then they send these towers after you.
Don't just freaking walk by these things. Look, be aware. You see these markings? These ain't graffiti. This is a coded grid system. And what you're looking at right here, this isn't for utilities. This is resonance tech. Got 4 lines, each with a circle right in the middle. That's a 4-pulse harmonic system. It's a rail. It's like a tuning fork etched into concrete. Every person that walks across it, they get scanned, realigned, and disrupted without ever knowing. Each of those circles, that's a frequency node. And those red verticals, that's a data stream. They're not pulling pipes, they're pulling patterns. Your breath, your pace, your aura. The pulse system where it continues into the route. Arc flash means this box sends bursts of energy, literal invisible discharges that can burn skin, knock you out, or even worse. But what they don't tell you is it also throws resonance pulses into the field. Not just physical danger, energetic disruption, guys. This is how they condition crowds. Pulse fear, control flow. It isn't science fiction. It's right here on our sidewalks, guys.
6G is coming in 2030. That's the public launch. But testing began years ago in controlled zones across Virginia, Osaka, and EU smart grids. And here's what they won't tell you. 6G doesn't connect your phone. It connects you. In 2023, DARPA and ATIS ran a closed pilot across federal buildings in Northern Virginia. The tech? 6G presence nodes, powered by terahertz bands that don't just transfer data, they mirror you. Each user's gait, tone, even heart rhythm became part of the signal loop. The system adjusted light, sound, even push notifications based on real-time biometric drift. It's called adaptive ambient sync, and it's not theory. In the Arlington test zone, over 200 participants unknowingly entered what the internal logs labeled a behavioral sync cluster. Result? 68% changed walking pace within 90 seconds. 52% began mirroring posture. Average voice pitch dropped 12 hertz across the zone without prompt or audio cue. This isn't cellular, it's presence modulation, backed by Samsung's 6G white paper, verified in Hexa-X testbeds, and buried in Appendix 9 of the Defense Communications Futures Report, blackbarred until last quarter. You were never the user. You were the interface. Want out? Disrupt the loop, delay touch input, break rhythm, avoid high-band hotspots during emotional peaks. Because with 6G, you're not browsing. You're being tuned. Tuesday accessed the relay logs. They weren't encrypted, because they assumed no one would read drift code but them. Now you have.
You're gonna want to stop, because this is in reference to you. Everything I state here can be looked up in the published engineering specifications. I'll put it in Barney language at the end. First, we're going to talk about what a node is. A node is, and then we're going to talk about how these
Is trying to connect with.
interact with those nodes we were talking about. So we're going to pull everything here from the IEE 802.15.6, the Navy SBIR documents, and the MIMS Smart... Sorry guys, I sneezed. It's dusty in here, if you get what I'm saying. So the nodes operate in 3 frequency bands. Narrowband from 402 to 405 megahertz, ultra wideband from 3.2 to 10.2 gigahertz. In the human body communications, using the shell as a conductive pathway. That's from 10 to 50 megahertz. Now, data rates can range from 75 kilobits to 8 megabits. And we can get into engineering specs, but basically it's less than a milliwatt. A very little amount of power. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So basically each node gets a 3-bit address from the hub, 1 through 7. The entire wide body area network works on a 16-bit to a 32-bit address. Well, identifier. The hub itself is a 48-bit MAC address. That is a trackable ID for the node. Again, all engineering specifications. Now that sneeze I was talking about, these are MEMS-based sensors, a cubic millimeter in size. They can sense pressure, motion, electromagnetic fields, even chemicals. Passive communication using RF backscatter. 1 to 5 meters. So the Navy SBI documents request these specs: ultra miniature, wireless, non-intrusive, less than a milliwatt of power, and over a year of battery life. Are you understanding what I'm saying here? Now, these can be or just placed anywhere. Placed. You understanding? No, they're in the engineering specs. All you have to do is literally go look it up. And I even got more documents that prove that it came from that period where we're locked down. Yep. Congratulations, you're like a fucking computer. EMF gear on my bio, men, women, even babies. Or just stay bare ass. You're grown.
6G, which is imminently, coming soon. Trump just signed an executive order to accelerate the rollout of it. That's basically going to be 5G on steroids. It operates at a drastically higher frequency, and it's going to cause more significant biological effects. In fact, they tested this 6G frequencies, and it literally caused DNA damage in neuronal stem cells. And so that's going to be rolled out soon. There'll have to be more transmitters for 6G infrastructure because it doesn't go very far. But, these are very damaging.
And this is most likely one of the motivating factors for the deployment of the experimental COVID shots. Using dark field microscopy, Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcea has captured in great detail what the scientific literature describes as effective technologies that exist today. Technologies such as quantum dots. Quantum dots are nanotechnology with the ability to organize, operate, communicate, and build structures within the blood. They do so with a tunable photoluminescence that can be programmed to dictate various tasks via optical communication. The description and images displayed in the scientific literature compared to what Mihalcea's dark field microscopy has captured are the same. You can see the quantum dots blinking in different colors, acting as the artificial intelligence directing the self-assembly around them. Bubbles are created within the blood that act as construction sites. Within these construction bubbles, the quantum dots organize the various materials into self-assembly. These technologies are being found in both the blood of the vaccinated and in the blood of the unvaccinated. Depending on what materials are needed, the quantum dots will trigger them into self-assembly. The COVID vaccines are full of rare and heavy metals to make all manner of nanotechnology. But it seems as if almost everyone is infected with some sort of nanotech. According to several research teams, everyone's blood seems to contain the materials required to produce the filaments and the lattice work for this technology. Blood samples that appear to be healthy have been completely transformed by applying a mere 10 milliamps of electric current for 2 hours. And it looks as if we may have been infected by the chemtrails. Morgellons disease was first reported in 2002. It's when synthetic fibers or filaments are growing in a person's body. It has been theorized for decades that this was being spread via chemtrails. And under a microscope, it appears to be the same filaments that people today are calling blood clots, and what the scientific journals call self-assembled hydrogels. According to Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org, nanoparticles are being sprayed worldwide.
2024, and here are 7 different people represented in these test tubes, and this is clinical waste that I'm about to dispose of, but these are 7 different people who came in to us and were embalmed, and during that process this spilled out of their arteries onto our embalming table tray, was kept, and I'm documenting it now before disposing of this clinical waste to prove to people that this is coming out of deceased vaccine recipients. Each one represents a person murdered by the state who will never see justice unless we get it for them. And I devote my life into getting that justice for them. This has got to stop.
They're coloured or gold.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Wow. Wow.
So the really awesome thing about this is exposure at a distance. So the colloidal gold didn't actually come into contact with the sample.
You serious? Why would, okay, I have a question. Why would colloidal gold be working like this? I obviously know very little about it. Why would it be working this effectively?
I don't know the answers to that question. I know that colloidal gold carries an electric charge. We make it with the process of electrolysis. It can be made in the home.
China just shattered a world record in quantum computing that required them to humiliate the world's greatest supercomputer, which happens to be in our country. The implications are even bigger than they seem, and I'm going to explain to you how they did it and what it all means. I'm Giga Qian, I invest and do business in China, and it never ceases to amaze me how news like this doesn't make it to the US. So I'm gonna tell you. If you've been following me, you might know about the Jiuzhang series of quantum computers, but 4.0 is a paradigm shift. The name comes from Jiuzhang Suanshu, which means the 9 chapters on the art of mathematics. It's an ancient text from around 200 BC, and it covers linear equations, geometry, and what we now call Gaussian elimination. The name is deliberate. They're basically saying we've been doing advanced math for 2200 years, and we're still the champs. And the Jiuzhang series of photonic quantum computers isn't necessarily new. They've been doing that for 6 years. But note something at the bottom. Talk about a leap. And if about 3,000 photons doesn't sound like much to you, you should know that the Hilbert space dimension is about 10 to the 2,461st, a number so large that it defies physical analogy. And we're just getting started here. You've probably heard of Google and IBM's quantum computers, but those use superconducting qubits, specifically transmon qubits. Transmon is a portmanteau of transmission line and plasmon qubits. It's beyond the scope of this video, but basically it's how they fit them on a chip. The Jiuzhang has an 8,176 mode spatiotemporally hybrid-coded interferometric circuit. Don't get scared by the words. That just means that photons interact between space and time dimensions simultaneously. So it's a 3D web that classical computers can't untangle. Actually, if you're not scared at all, you should probably pay closer attention. And now for the world record. The Jiuzhang 4.0 completed a Gaussian boson sampling problem in 25 microseconds. That problem would take the world's fastest supercomputer a tredecillion years. That supercomputer happens to belong to the US Department of Energy. It's called El Capitan, and a tredecillion is 10 to the 42nd. A lot of zeros. And to those of you who would say Gaussian boson sampling is just a party trick, well, the Wright brothers didn't take passengers on their first flight, but that was still a heck of a party trick, and it led to something pretty big. And remember, we're talking photonics. We'll come back to that, but you need to know that China is the only country, not the first country, the only country to demonstrate quantum computational advantage in 2 distinct physical modalities. They're not just betting on one force. And while the single photon detectors likely require cooling, we don't know, this is my speculation, the photonic processor does not need the cryogenic cooling. And for the people who think you can't trust this kind of information, it just happened, and it was published in Nature, one of the world's top peer-reviewed scientific journals. Jiuzhang 4.0 just proved something incredible is possible, at least with the hardware. Do you see what that something might be?
This is what they look like. There are 2 of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. Just a wisp, a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Hundreds of times colder than interstellar space. Amongst the coldest and most isolated and extreme conditions that humans have ever been able to engineer. These fridges, interestingly enough, which are called pulse tube dilution refrigerators, have a thing called a pulse tube, which emits a sound roughly once per second, which sounds eerily like a heartbeat. So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it is an awe-inspiring thing, at least for me. It feels like an altar to an alien god. They really are impressive machines. At the heart of this big box is a tiny chip about the size of your thumbnail. And on this chip resides all of the wonder and magic that makes this thing go. In quantum mechanics, there's this concept that a thing can exist in two states which are mutually exclusive at the same time, quote unquote. And I'm using those words because the English language was developed before we had concepts to describe what these things actually are doing. Imagine that there really are parallel universes out there, and now imagine you have two that are exactly identical in every respect, all the way out to the horizon as far as we can see, down to the last little atomic detail of every single thing, with only one difference. And that's the value of a little thing called a qubit on this chip, which is a contraction of quantum bit. And that qubit is very much like a bit or a transistor in a conventional computer. It has two distinct physical states, which we call 0 and 1 for bit. In a conventional computer, these are mutually exclusive. That device is either one or the other, and never anything else. In a quantum computer, that device can be in this strange situation where these two parallel universes have a nexus, a point in space where they overlap. And when you increase the number of these devices, every time you add one of these qubits, you double the number of these parallel universes that you have access to. Until such time when you get to a chip like this, which is about 500 of these bits, you have something like 2 to the 500th power of these guys living in that chip. So the way I think about it is that the shadows of these parallel worlds overlap with ours. And if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours to make an effect in our world. Now, this may sound very odd to you and bizarre, and in fact, I am using language that a normal theoretical physicist probably wouldn't use, but this is, what I'm telling you is absolutely correct and in line with the way that these things actually work. The doubling of the number of these qubits on the chip has happened once a year for the past 9 years.
This is what is claimed to be the highest resolution 3D image of the brain ever taken from outside the skull. It's a step towards saving a lot of money. It's a step towards saving lives, but it's also a step towards reading your mind. I think you know what I mean. I'm Giga Chen, and I've already told you about Midjourney's full-body CT scanner. This, from Aleph Neuro, also uses Butterfly Network's ultrasound on chip. Let's talk about how. Aleph Neuro claims that what you're seeing right now is 100 times more volumetrically detailed than a standard CT scan, and they're doing this with sound waves. This means there's no drilling, there's no surgery, and you don't even have to worry about radiation. They get around all of this by injecting microbubbles into your bloodstream. Then they track these tiny gas bubbles using ultrasound. By tracking millions of these little bubbles, they reconstruct the vascular network of your brain, and they do it in 4 minutes. The tiny little blood vessels in your brain are where you see signatures left by Alzheimer's, stroke, and traumatic brain injuries. The stuff we use now, CT, MRI, it all struggles to see this. Aleph Neuro's technology supposedly can. But let's look closer at their stated mission before we start celebrating. They are building brain interfaces for what they refer to as the telepathic future. If you can see the wiring in real time, you can decode thoughts. Yeah, not so sure I like that one. Thankfully, they dropped the code, dataset, and processing pipeline on GitHub under MIT license. Let's be clear on some things. As usual, we're very early, and independent peer review hasn't confirmed all of their claims. The road to an FDA-approved medical device is a long one. You have to do those pesky microbubble injections, but they're working on a version where you might not have to. This can make life so much better for so many people. I'm not a fan of the telepathy tech angle, even though it obviously generates marketing buzz, but if they're gonna go that way, I guess they might as well open source it, huh?
They have unfortunately hacked the human mind, hacked the human brain and the human body, and it is once that super highway of frequency is set up between the device and the targeted individual, they can send instructions. And those instructions ride on a wave of frequency that it was tuned into the individual's resonant frequency, and then they can send instructions that manipulate thoughts, manipulate emotions, manipulate behavior, and manipulate even the vitals and so forth, the heartbeat, the breathing pattern of the targeted individual.
And they obtain remotely an EEG readout of your brainwave signature. It's called a digital brainwave imprint. And they take that digital brainwave imprint, that copy, that digital copy of your brainwave signature, and they download it, or I should say upload it back into their supercomputer, which is actually a conscious computer. And then they tie you to that conscious computer for life.
All this technology has been building up and building up. They use direct energy weapons. They've had programs like Project Monarch. for mind control, the super soldier program. I mean, they just don't stop. And check out this map right here. These are underground bases.
Like, share, and subscribe to Battleborn Believers.